Pastor Deborah here with another global Tele-Ministry podcast episode. I want to bring to you a powerful topic that was introduced to me, taken into the Spirit so I can teach. And you're listening to me on the audio. This is Pastor Deborah. Somehow when I recorded this section, sort of the introduction, got messed up. And what this Tele-Ministry is going to be about, as I said, it was from a documentary I watched last night about men and women in another country and another nation. And the story is about a young man who was asked by a Westerner what he thought about his sisters going out without a burqa on. And he said very openly and honestly, if I can't control them, I have no power. And if I have no power, then I have no honor and respect. And if I have to control my sisters and who they marry and wearing the burqa out in public, that is the only way my culture and my family and my faith have taught me how I am to have honor and respect from everybody. So this story is going to kind of pick up where I start talking about that even if this young man's sisters marry somebody that they disapprove of, and how this works. So I'll add some pictures here, because somehow this got really messed up. But this one is entitled, If I Can't Control, I Have No Power. And I'm going to take it into the Spirit for you so you can see what the soul is telling us and what is happening to the Spirit. Okay, so it kind of be a little messed up between now and then, but we'll get there. And when she got married, it would be her husband or her uncle, or even still her father. What he said was, if I could not control her, then I would have no power. Very powerful statement. And then I took it a little deeper, sort of finished it for him, and said, if he had no power over his sister, his wives, he would have no honor. He would have no respect out in the community among the other leaders and men. So in order for a man in this country to have honor and respect by the community, he had to control his sisters, his nieces, his wives, and he had to control them completely. Now, where did that come from? Is that coming from a darkened heart? A heart that's full of the veil of darkness and ignorance? Is that the culture? Is that the faith dictating control? Is this man feeling powerless himself? Does he feel controlled by his faith, by others, by the community's respect and what they think about him? Because we hear in some countries there's something called honor killings, that if the female disobeys the father, dishonors their wishes, marries somebody they don't want them to marry, doesn't fulfill the marriage vows no matter what happens, seeks a divorce, brings any kind of shame and dishonor on the father or the family, then they had a right, according to the Quran, according to their culture, to kill that child. Now, in this particular country, they had passed a law that said that was no longer legal. But laws don't change hearts. They don't change a mindset. They definitely don't change faith and culture and religion. But what struck me was this young man said, if I don't control, then I have no power. So I took it into the spirit, and here's what happened. Originally, this guy named Lucifer, who had a powerful position, but not the most powerfulest one in the kingdom of heaven. And he must have felt controlled by this God that created him, by all the laws of the kingdom. He wanted something in his heart after he saw his great beauty coming out of him, which was the light of this God shining through him. His body was diamonds and jewels and pearls, sapphires and emeralds. And this light, this voice, this eternal light and life was shining out through all of those jewels. And they were singing and praising. His diamonds actually were a musical instrument. And he felt controlled. So he wanted to be free of that God to do what he wanted to do, which was take his place. So he rebelled, just in his own heart, with thoughts of violence towards this God. I'm going to take over and I'm going to sit on the throne. Then I will have control of everything, and I will have honor and respect. Now I was beginning to see where this young man in this country got that from. Well, that didn't happen, and this creature, Lucifer, got cast down to the earth where I'm at, and all of us humans are. But he still had that desire. He still had those 5 I wills. I want this. I want that. I want this glory and this power. I want to be respected because I want to be in control. So we went about to take down this God's children who were made in his image and likeness, which I teach on in the King's International Spiritual Care University. We're going to take them down, destroy them, bring dishonor, disrespect, and shame to this God by causing these precious little spiritual beings to disobey him. He was expecting this God to do just what he did to him, cast them out of his presence, put shame on them and dishonor. So he proceeded, and it happened. The little being named Adam and this creature named woman got cast out of the presence, the glory, the light of their Creator, their mother and father. They took on shame. They brought dishonor to their father. And they died, sort of a spiritual honor killing. They died. Now God was so good, he said, they're sort of dead, the spirit, but they haven't been quite punished in the fullness of the punishment. I'll get to that later. That will be a true honor killing. When my son goes to the cross, and he lays down his life for this disobedience, this lack of love and control that I lost, he will suffer this honor killing and bring back honor and dignity into the heart of God in the place where these little ones could not do. So honor killings have been around since the beginning. Desiring to control have been around. The lack of feelings of being powerless have been around. So what happened spiritually, inside, the spirit part of all humanity lost its place of control, its high place, its glory and honor. And it took on shame, bent over, filled with heaviness, no bright light shining out anymore, a being of darkness that's perverted, brought shame to itself, brought dishonor to itself. It's sort of like walking around without any clothes on, full of shame. And it also brought dishonor and shame in the heart of their creator, their father and mother. This was the condition of the little spirit. It sunk down into the deep, miry clay of the flesh. Now the flesh became the controller, became just as that young man. I will control that spirit part of me. Because if I don't, the subconscious part of me, my flesh, I will have no control over it, and I will get no honor. The only way I get honor and respect and glory in this temporal world is if I control completely and cover up my spirit in a burqa. And it's never to come out. It's never to be by itself. And how did the soul get that idea? From the adversary of God himself, Lucifer, who became named Satan. Satan knew if he could control completely the spirit, put a burqa on it, a dark veil of flesh, where it cannot see out, nobody can see in, and it would repel all love and light. And it could go nowhere without the soul. So it happened. So when I heard this young man talking, his soul was talking to me. The soul was saying, I don't feel I have any power anywhere. And the only way I get power is if I control something or someone. Some people, only way they get control is to control an animal, or money, or children, or babies. We see a lot in domestic violence, sexual abuse, human trafficking, control of somebody else. Why? The soul wants to feel it has power. And what comes from that power? Honor among the community, respect, a place where it fits in. But the only way it can get that is through control of someone else. So in this documentary, it's wonderful. I listened to abused women in that culture. I listened to young little girls who had been sold at 7 years old to a 70-year-old man for money because the parents were poor. I heard about how back in the 70s in this country, that wasn't the way the culture was. It was more open and free. But when a communist country came in, started introducing them to freedom of sex and drugs, something happened. The Taliban then responded, we're going back. We're going to do what the Quran says. And what happened in a lot of these cultures became what we call here in America patriarchal society. The men rule, and women have no rights. You can pass the laws, but they cannot be, they don't want them educated, because education, even to the soul, provides freedom of thought, freedom of concepts, new ideas. They take their place. And I even heard in this documentary that most of the people in this country had not even read the Quran. They were just told things by the imams. And they wanted to be respected. They wanted to have some honor in the community. The only way they could get it, they were taught from little children. So they must control the women, and they must keep them subjected to this control. Now this young man, he saw nothing wrong with it. That was what he grew up in, and that's what he learned. But the females, some of them seem okay with it. Some of them wanted a life to be a doctor or a lawyer, but they could not do that and get married. They could not be free to marry who they loved. They couldn't even talk about it. So here we go, into the spirit. If the spirit even starts thinking, looking, desiring to be free, here comes the control, the beatings, the whippings, the sexual abuse, the vexation and the torment from the soul, the controller. The controller who has been educated, trained by the flesh, by society and culture, even religion. Because religion is mostly in the soul. And it has learned that in order for the soul to feel good, to feel honorable and respected, it must control something or someone. Politicians control money. They control votes. They try to control who's elected. They try to control global affairs. Oh, but they'll lie and cheat and do whatever. What are they trying to do? Control something that would bring them honor and respect among a community. Usually it's that in that dark community that's in the spirit that they are trying to get honor and respect. When you get honor, what does that mean? That means you're lifted up. People think highly of you. They respect you. They want to talk with you. They think you have some kind of wisdom. You're accepted by your peers. You're placed above them. What does respect mean? They think you're wise. You're not out of sync with everybody else. So in this documentary, this young boy, he must have been maybe early 20s. He was very honest about why he would make his sisters wear the burqa, even if they didn't want to. His job was to force, to control them in order for him to have power. So in the spirit world, behind the dark scenes, there's a power struggle going on. If you get power, you will have honor. You will be lifted up, highly respected. Many of the multi-generational Satanists that I work with, they believed if they did whatever Satan told them to do, kill anything, abuse anything, they would rule in hell with him. They would be lifted up. They would have better mansions, all the money they wanted, all the girls and harems. Their children would inherit. There was honor and respect in the meetings. Nobody would challenge them. They would have power. How? Demonic spirits. They would come into the spirit, and if they had some power, because they learned how to control their own spirit, they learned how to disassociate and control their thoughts through multiplying, obeying. I'll tell you a story, even how that works. This young lady I was helping named Candy, she had gotten saved, so she couldn't be used as a queen anymore. So they were going to have a new crowning service at somewhere in the state of Florida, in central Florida, where this is real big stuff. But there was real bad weather, and these three guys, these three high priests, high guys, had to get there. But I prayed. God stopped their car and would not let them physically go. But they spiritually tried to go. But they couldn't. Because in that world, okay, so you can't physically make it. If you will get your spirit there, You are checked off. You are not absent. Because it's really the spirit that Satan and God are working with. So this young guy in this country, in this documentary, is very honest. He wanted power. The only way he could show power, not only to himself and his soul, and to his neighbors and his family, to get the respect he wanted, get the honor he wanted, and the acceptance is he had to control his sisters or his wife. That was the only way. They did not really go to school and get educated. They didn't do works of charity. They were not really nice men. A lot of them were into child abuse, domestic violence, alcoholism, drugs. They couldn't, in their particular religion, Islam, the men usually went to the temple every day or the mosque. But I think in this country, one day a week, they would let the women go uncovered. And they loved it. And no men were allowed. How did we get like this? Through religion and faith. How did a man need to control another human so much and desire it just to have power? Well, what does it mean to have power? If you don't feel powerful, then you must feel powerless. And it was a way in that culture to show you got the goods. Human trafficking children, they have power over children and women, even if they have to drug them. So this young man, he was very proud. That was how he was brought up. And it was interesting. I learned so much. Not only is he ignorant and desiring to have respect and honor. Excuse me, a bug's flying around. Sitting at my door again, watching a cat walking by. Beautiful sunny day out there. Kind of cool. He wanted power, but more than power, he wanted honor. He wanted respect. He wanted to feel it within himself. He wanted other people, his family, to honor and respect him. He wanted his neighbors, his community, to honor and respect him. He wanted his God, Allah, and his imam and all the men in the mosque to honor and respect him and think good of him and kindly, that he was a good person and a good man, and he was a contributor to society. And the only way that could all happen and his soul could feel it was if he controlled his sisters. Whether they wanted to wear a burqa or if they wanted to marry, whatever they wanted to do, they were not going to do it. He had to demonstrate his power over them and their wishes. Now, like I said, I have to be able to take that and see it in the spirit. So that is how the soul thinks in its darkened, unlightened condition. Even if the soul is a believer in Allah or in any God, the soul wants power. And it has learned the way you get that is you control something. You don't control yourself because you're not the problem. You don't control other men. They're not the problem. It's the women. Why do they think that women need to be controlled? Are they so threatened by the female? What does the female have that these men believe they have to control? Is she a beautiful object that somebody might steal, another man in the community? Is she so beautiful that you have to hide it as a treasure so nobody would look at it and it's just for you? What is it in the soul that desires and has a need to have power? What that tells me is that young man did not feel like he had any power over himself, over life, over his friends, unless he controlled his sisters. And then when he got married, his wife. Was this due to ignorance of human rights? Was this due to looking through the eyes of the soul at another human being and saying, because you are a female or a child, I have to control you, I'm better than you? Is that what it is? Is it because of the concepts of ancestors and long customs of the country? Is this because of their faith and their religion that they're taught this? What is it about a female? Is she so sexually desirous that you have to cover her up? What is going on with the men? Is there no control in the lust of their eyes or their hearts? Can't they control what they look at? In the documentary, they showed a lot of women, beautiful women around. In these cultures, I'll tell you a story we just learned about here in Pensacola several months ago. We had a young man who was learning to fly planes. He was from a very wealthy, elite family in Saudi Arabia. And he went around and killed some people. And when they started discovering he had pornography all on his computer. Now, what's going on? He comes from a nation everybody covers up. The Quran doesn't say it is okay to do pornography, but it's well known among the military, the men. That is what these people do because their culture is so restrictive. So what's going on? Is that the soul? Why did that young man in the documentary believe in order to have honor and respect, which he must not have felt as a man, as a human being, the only way he could get it was to have power and control over a female? Are the females that full of power that you must subdue them? Or that the men feel so threatened by education and the female mind? Is the body that they're trying to hide it or protect it? Are they trying to protect their wife from the eyes of other men who don't want to control the lust of their eyes? And also in the documentary, there was a young lady. She had gotten married as a child. And she started having children, and then her husband started bringing in his brothers and other men, charged them money to have sex with his wife. Now, is that a religious activity that the Quran teaches is okay to do to your wife? And to charge men money. So she was basically a human traffic slave for her husband. And he was making money. Now that does not sound like a good thing to do to your wife. So she was able to get a divorce. And because there's money involved with divorce and all kinds of things, their laws are different, and it's so combined with the faith. But what's going on? Can't men control themselves? Why did this young boy desire honor and respect? Why didn't he go to school and become a doctor? Why didn't he learn how to read and write? Most of them don't. But yet he desires to have honor and respect. The only way he said he could get it was to control his sisters and then control who they marry. See, it's kind of confusing. Is it the women's problem when they go out? A lot of them are beautiful, some of them are just okay. Is it the women's problem? We have that right here. Oh, she got raped because she wore a short dress. Or she went out late. Is she the problem? Or is it the man who has a lust of his eyes and his lust of his flesh wants to feel pleasure? Who has the problem? The female or the men? Maybe the men don't want to have any control on them. And the only way they can do that is cover up the ladies in a burqa. And then they get honor and respect. But let me tell you, something's not right there. And what I had to see was this is what the soul does to the spirit. The soul says to the spirit, I am going to control you. You are in my flesh now. You're going to do what I want you to do. Because I want to be honored. I want to have respect. And I want to have some power. The only way I can get that is if you do what I tell you to do. And I need you to serve Satan. And I need you to, and I'm going to lie, cheat, and steal, and you ain't going to talk on. You aren't going to tell anyone. We're married. There is no divorce. There is no power that can separate the two of us. But the soul wasn't aware of. There was a power called Hebrews 4:12. And the blood of Christ and the Agape Love, the loving Father for the Spirit. But the soul becomes just like that young man, a bully, a human trafficker, a controller, a taskmaster to the Spirit. Now this goes way back to the very beginning, but it's played out. You can see what is going on between the soul and the Spirit in cultures, in relationships between parents and children, between men and women, between gods, as I said, gods. Because there is actually, out of the Christian Bible, there is a God of heaven, and there is a God down here that controls the kingdom of darkness. So this young man, if his sisters were older, excuse me, my thing did I don't know what it did, were older than him, they had to listen to him. And his family, one girl wanted to get married. She was real happy. She knew what would happen. Life was over. And then one of the sisters, she had hoped to continue on in law school, but he said, this is how honorable the men were. Oh, yes, we'll get married, and you can continue on. And when they got married, he changed his mind, because he made all the decisions for this person. Now, what right did a man have to make the decisions about another person? Just because they were married? Well, what happened about the brother to his older sisters? What part in society? Was that culture? Was that the law of that country? Was that ancient history learned through the years and years? Was that their religion? So here's a lady. She wanted to love, have children and a husband, and she wanted to also be a lawyer. He said yes when they got getting married. Then said, no, you ain't going outside the house without your burqa on. Now they did show these people inside their homes. They did not have to wear their hijabs or their burqas, only out in public. But behind the things, they could wear nothing. They could go without their stuff. Kind of what is going on? It's like you can be one person, we'll say the soul, could be one person when they're privately at home with the Spirit. But when that soul and that physical body goes outside, it's going to act different. We see that in politicians. Out in front of us, when they're trying to get elected, up in Congress, they say one thing, they dress one way. They'll use faith and religion and prayer, and they'll use everything they can to try to get you to believe they are honorable, respectful, when back in the back of them, in their soul, they are devious, just like these men. They're power hungry, and they only can get that power to get respect. Because without that position of power, saying politicians, they have no respect inside of themselves, and they have nothing in society that somebody could say, wow, you are a nice person. I honor you and respect you. They will take from you for themselves. So I learned a lot about the soul and the spirit, because when I watch documentaries, I am being shown what's going on in the darkness of the flesh, in the soul, and with the spirit, out in culture, in nations, and families. I'm hearing the soul talk. I'm listening carefully. I'm listening to the imams talk and what their faith says in the Quran. I'm learning about culture and the effects of war and invasions, and one culture coming in, I think it was Russia, bringing in too much freedom. The people went bonkers. Because when you control people through any means and you just open it up, they don't know how to handle it. They have to be taught and go. Sometimes it takes generations. We saw that in Iraq when Hussein was there. He was not a nice guy. But he kept the two factions, the Shias and the Sunnis, working. He was a tyrant. He was a military general, because these two factions were always at war with each other. And he had to be tough to keep building the oil wells, digging, and working. When he was taken out, the country was happy, and I'm sure they were, but they weren't prepared to get along with each other. You took the Band-Aid off, and it just came pouring out. 40, 50 years of lockdown. They didn't know how to get along with their neighbors. They didn't know how to work together to rebuild the country. Fighting all the time, who's going to control. Same way with the spirit and the soul. The spirit can get immediate freedom, but it has to learn, needs to be mentored and tutored. And it'll make a lot of mistakes spiritually. Now, the soul is not going to change. And it's going to fight and be a bully, and it's going to do just what it's doing. And the soul will actually try to kill, have an honor killing within itself. And how it does it is, if the soul, which usually is in contact with the dark side, the dark force of Satan, Satan will send in the taskmasters, send in the soldier, and they will torment, abuse, hurt the spirit, and put it in its place, in subjection to the soul. And it's not to raise its head, not to raise its eyes. Now, it can't kill the spirit, but it can torment it, it can beat it and rape it. And the spirit will actually go into a trance, self-hypnosis. And I saw this with a young girl lived with me named Amanda. When the emotional pain gets too much and too much for the spirit, they'll start cutting themselves. We've all seen it. And what they're doing is they're trying to get to a high place. Blood to them is life. That the soul and the spirit get so frightened and they have to cut to feel that they're alive. They drink their blood. They've done that before. It triggers a part in them. They disassociate to get to a high place, to escape. She would say she was trying to get the Mad Hatter to come. Also, I would run into some of her many parts. One time I found her under a bed, and she had clothes on, but the part that was there felt naked because it had been sexually abused spiritually. And I had to put some clothes on it and bring it out. All of these women behind the burqas, they move in the spirit. The men move in the spirit. The imams move in the spirit. All the men in the synagogue move in the spirit. all the children move. So we have a battle not only with the soul and the spirit, we have a battle for, equality between a man and a woman. Yeah, we all are different. We have different bodies, and we have different roles to play in society. A man cannot give birth to a baby. We all have different roles in the household. But getting the men in those cultures to accept that a woman is equal, does not need to be controlled. Getting the women, you're looking at years and years and years of education and training to change an entire nation. Now, we've heard a lot about the Taliban. They don't believe women should go to school at all. There was a case in Africa where the Boko Haram went to a girls' school and captured the girls, took them off into the jungle, took their wives, raped them. They ain't going home. It's against their religion to go to school, to educate them. I think what's going on is the men fearful of education? Is he fearful of the knowledge? Is he afraid if this female gets that he cannot control them anymore? It's the same way in the soul. The soul is afraid that if the spirit gets spiritual revelations, knowledge, education, the soul will lose control of it. If the spirit finds somebody that can help it, mother it, free it through a Hebrews 4:12, the soul will be no longer the boss, no longer in control, no longer having any power. It will lose its honor and respect. Is that what's going on? Yes. And it's played out in real life with real people. And we all wonder what's going on. But I wanted to bring this to you because I saw this documentary last night about if I don't control, I will have no power. And if I don't have power, then I have no honor and respect. So out of fear, not having power, out of fear of not being respected by the community, by the family, within the society of men, out of fear, the soul will seek to control something, a female, a child, out of fear, out of not being accepted, shunned, having no honor and respect. Fear is the driving force for everything that happens. The fear of having dishonor and shame brought upon you. You would think that the men would get honor and respect if their wives were educated and could read, went to school, and their children did, and they worked, they brought in money. You would think that would be something that would be honorable, contributing to their culture and society. But not in this culture. The only way they get their respect is by controlling the lives, the minds, the bodies of precious women. But that's how the soul is. That's just a reflection of what's deep in the subconscious, the soul, from all of its learning, its ancestors, its parents, its culture, its laws of its government, experiences it's had, its faith, its imams, the religious books, its pressure from the herd. How many of us will do what the herd does to have not be considered, not one of them, a black sheep of the family? How many of us will go along with the herd? Why? Out of fear of being left out of fear of not having respect, being honored among your friends and your family. So this was a great one. I learned a lot about the soul and the spirit. And the soul was talking to me through that young boy. And he was explaining he was very comfortable with it. The girls knew it, but they didn't really know. And he didn't really know. But he had to have power. And he did it out of fear that he would not be honored and respected. So fear was the foundation for the control of the women. Fear that they would not have their place of power in society, their rightful place they believed they were to be, the top. They would be replaced, or by somebody that was maybe better than them, especially in education, or that this female would be equal to them. So I thought it was an interesting documentary, learned a lot, took it into the soul and the spirit, and I wanted to teach this to you. So when you study other cultures and you listen very carefully to other religions, and you learn about human rights, women's rights, and what men are thinking, and burqas and hijabs, you want to know what's going on. And one of the fathers who was interviewed, he talked about he had spent some time in the West, and he discovered back in his country there was not even freedom of speech. You couldn't even have freedom to dance, freedom to think like other countries. Why would they not let you dance? Freedom to even have thoughts, or freedom even to speak about love or what you like to do. Lack of freedom. Why? How did that happen? Are there morality? Are there freedom? People that control your freedom? How is that controlled in a culture? Is it controlled by police or the military? What would happen to you if you danced? Is it considered wrong by the Quran to dance? All interesting questions. But this whole thing of lack of freedom to the spirit comes from the soul, comes from the culture and the religion, the history of a nation, its experiences, its laws, to the soul, and then it controls the spirit. But if you want to be free spiritually, you want to begin that long road of your spirit being free, then let's start with a Hebrews 4:12. If you want that, you just believe in your heart and agree with me. I'll do the prayer. Father, you sent me into these nations, anointed with your power, your honor. Father, take your word of God, your agape love, separate this soul and spirit, put a annulment of the marriage, dissolve the marriage, a divorce, cut all the ties and the bonds, the contracts between the spirit and the soul. Separate them forever so that your spirit that you desire to touch and reach and teach can learn how to be free, separate from the taskmaster, the controller of the soul, and all that it has learned, its cultures, its ancestors, its religion, and this spirit that needs freedom of thought, freedom to dance before you in joy and peace, freedom to think and make right choices, freedom to learn and be spiritually educated in truth and light. Father, do a Hebrews 4:12 and then begin applying Isaiah 61 and 62 in the Spirit's life. You paid a price for it, Father. Help these little ones to come out of that abusive marriage, out of that relationship that's controlled by the soul and the flesh, controlled by culture and religion. Bring that spirit on out. Free it. Put a legal document in the courts of heaven. Divorced. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen. If you pray that, it begins. I hope to get this up maybe today. I've got to go out and do some work. I've been working on another video for The Multitudes, my audiobook. It's a beautiful sunny day. Kind of cool. But this is Pastor Deborah. And this has been another Tele-Ministry of Agape Love, Love is Here. And the title of it, If I Don't Control, I'll have no power, and I will have no honor and respect in the community or within myself. Love always and forever. Pastor Deborah, see you again on another global Tele-Ministry teaching.